Good evening. We're starting a teensy little bit late tonight. Apologies. The fox was sleeping on the title screen, and now it is awake and barking and shining. These are all normal fox things. Also, yes, Chickstraw, congratulations on being first, even if that shouldn't have been possible in the way that you did it. And on the watch streak. And I hope your power doesn't go out. Semi-related, one of the best investments I ever made was an uninterruptible power supply for my computer. I have legit lost, like... probably $1,500 worth of just hardware to power surges. Mostly hard drives, but one GPU. That's where most of the money came from in that price tag. And since getting a UPS, the crappy privately owned for-profit power company that services my area, has made several attempts on my hardware, and none of them have succeeded. Fox time indeed. That's my secret. It's always Fox time. And there is always time for Fox. We scream. I like how even when reduced to like a little ball of light, like a little wisp, that other fox is also willing to scream alongside the main fox. Speaking of foxes, they scream forevermore. Yeah, unironically, screaming is basically the fox equivalent of T-posing. When two foxes get into a fight, they don't hurt each other, they just scream, and whoever gets tired of screaming first loses. This looks like the Alps in your country. I think you might have some sort of terrifying supernatural plague in your country. If so, I suggest getting a fox to solve the problem. Oh, the thing doesn't last forever. Okay. But the spectators of the screaming match win. It's adorable. We have options. Never mind. Ooh, flower. I see that flower and my mind just goes to like the first Shrek movie, where it's like blue flower, red thorns, and then like Donkey's like running through an entire field of them, looking for one and being like, this would be so much easier if I wasn't colorblind. Unironically, the first Shrek movie was like way better than it had any right to be. I've only seen Shreks 1 and 2 and The Last Wish. Everything else in that universe I haven't seen. I also had the Shrek 2 tie-in game for the Xbox 360. It was not a very good game. This grass is floating. Alright, I'm pretty sure to get through here, I gotta get energy into that thing. Which might involve finding like the right route through these things to like zip from all the way over there to all the way up here before the energy expires. It also might involve not detouring to get a recharge. It has been a while since I played this game, so I don't actually remember the right way to do it. This, however, is fine. Oh, she's just gonna give me the answer. Alright. This is fine. I mean, it's basically what I was already doing, just without the detour. I have once again been bathed. Really, I'm at my quota for the entire year at this point. This really is such a pretty environment. I feel like I would quite enjoy frolicking in it if I had any stamina whatsoever. Regrettably, I was born with lungs that don't really work. So I can only experience stuff like this vicariously, like this. This looks like another thing that would blast me up if I found a way to turn it on. That means I lose most screaming matches. So like Fox screaming matches isn't about like one continuous note. You're allowed to like inhale and then keep screaming. It's more of a willpower thing. That said, I do hate being screamed at and screaming, so realistically, yeah, I would probably lose. In my youth, though, I was constantly screaming at my younger brother. Because he was constantly doing all kinds of, like, out-of-line stuff. It's like, I've got it in me somewhere. I just haven't done it in a long time. Where can I use this power? I presume that it's like a thing where I gotta put the power in and then make it up there before it expires. Water is a teensy bit jagged. But that's okay, I don't judge. It's forbidden to snack stones in a lot of places because people disrupt fish and insect habitats. I can understand the insects, but how does that disrupt fish? Unless they're like putting them in rivers and such. I would imagine that the fish would just kind of like swim over the rocks. Or around, let's not get crazy. Yeah, what if I just keep wagging my tail and see if the power goes somewhere? Just serendipitously. Ah, they take the stones from the rivers. That makes sense. It's like, stop, you're causing erosion. It's not cool. Don't do that. Oh, you know what it probably is? Didn't I unlock that ability that was like, you can do a zoop? Wasn't that like a thing that I could do? I think that was the thing that I unlocked. I think I unlocked like a thing where I can like blast forward. Yeah, I can walk on water in spirit form, which I think I can enter by doing this. And I might be misremembering the order that I get things in. But I think I also get the ability to, like, blast myself forward. I'm gonna try being a ghost and going up here, though. So I can definitely spin these things. It's easy when you remember that you have, like, the ability to do things. Though I can't stay up there for long. People are building, so they make civilization, and then there is Fox, so people are happy. At least that's how it's supposed to be. I might be misremembering things. Pretty sure people building is this. Or maybe it's just stacked stone, so maybe I want the, I'm not sure. Luckily, there's technically only 9 potential combinations for these, so... Keep my energy to those hieroglyphics, now I gotta go get more. That's fine. There is plenty here. Yeah, I'm gonna assume that the fox goes through the portal and then the person, like, makes the buildings. And if that's not it, I'll just start brute forcing the combination. Unless there's like a third one somewhere that I just haven't spotted. Oh, it's just turned them both to portal. Okay. I was overthinking it. So they kept building these towers as people kept dying. Oh, thank you for the hit bats, I appreciate it. Oh. I presume that these are graves. So you've hit past Wagtail. That does tend to be how it goes. So the mountain erupting kills people. I remember that one. Kind of macabre to have all the different, like, monoliths just be like, yeah, all the people are dead. But very on point, and hello, that looks like a thing that gives me a thing. It also feels far enough away that it probably means that this is like a side thing that I don't have to do. Or maybe I'm wrong. I'm not sure. There is a third thing here, so... Right? So yeah, lots of people dead gets me in here. And there's a dead person here. Come on, fight with me. I'm a fox, don't you want to get up? Alright, so if I had a staff, I could give that to the guy. But I don't, so I can't. I might find one later on that I can bring back. A lot of the shamans and their staves are like diabolically hidden. The first time I played this game, I like very much needed a guide to find them all. Also, yeah, especially like if it's a deliberately constructed graveyard, like flowers of remembrance would probably be present. Power for Fox. Alright, there's the zoop forward. I knew that was a thing that I got. It also doesn't consume my energy, which I'm very on board with. I think it's also in the direction of the camera, so I gotta be mindful of that as well. My ghost got to use the cool, like, rocket launch thing. I've gotta walk. This is fine. Oh, there was power right there. Oh well. Like, make sure you know how to use this thing. I don't think that my ghost can weigh down switches, but like, imagine if I left my body like where one of the like shoot forward things was, and then turned it on, and it just like I woke up in midair. That'd be funny, I think. There's the thing there. The volcano erupts and people die. Or the volcano erupts and the volcano erupts, I suppose. No. Give me a second. It's really hot, so I've got a fan blowing, but it's like blowing my hair into my face. Normally my headset keeps that under control, but sometimes individual strands break free and then they like start tickling me and it's just It would be really funny if I did like the dog bonk thing. Like, oh, you can't get through bars. But it is not like that. This looks like I want to put a ball here to block the drain and flood this area. That kind of feels like what I want to do. Your day was 30 degrees Celsius, I would die. That hut looks like where a dead body would be. I was mistaken. I actually really like rain. I think I mentioned this before, but like just... my absolute favorite, like, time weather combination is like early evening light rain. I also like heavier rain, but heavier rain tends to result in people like hydroplaning their cars and taking up power lines and ruining my internet, so like... we can stick with light rain for now. I actually have Heavy Rain, the game we use Screen Jason a lot. I've never played it. Like, I've owned that game for years, I think because they were delisting it, and they were like, okay, to heck with it, we're just making it free, and then if you own it, you can download it as much as you like. So I grabbed it, and I just own it. want to meet whoever built this one. They did an incredible job. No, it's not even touching the thing at all. It's just straight up floating. Like, whoever built that could build a flying castle. And I want to see them work. I feel like if you live in a fantasy setting, and you don't at least try to get your hands on a flying castle, you're kind of like squandering the opportunity. Might have to steal it from Dracula. I mean, unless he's like declared that no other flying castles can exist and he'll personally like destroy any others, you could just make your own. Like he made it. It's possible. Just do what he did. And this area is now substantially better. If you could choose pirate ship or flying castle, you would choose pirate ship. You want to ride it from the mountaintops to the lake by pushing it over the edge and holding onto the ropes to speed the ride down and free fall speeds. I mean, you could do that, just have a flying castle, and then, like, as a prank, turn off the thing that makes it fly. But, like, don't tell any of your guests. Hey, Fox. Oh, there's a dead guy. Here, have your thing. I have missed so many shamans. Shaman? Dudes. You could be the Flying Dutchman except without the Dutch and without the man. I mean, you also wouldn't have the flying because you wanted a ship, not a flying castle. So, like, you would be the Flying Dutchman, except none of it. You would just be the... Castle's so tiny you can build a ship around it that's held up by the castle. No. What you do is you build a flying castle, but then the flying castle has a moat, and then the moat is so big that you can have a ship in it. Looks like I'm gonna get rocks in here. So I can kind of just follow the grooves backwards, I think. If I stand here, will I get squished? It fucking killed me. I'm actually fucking dead. I don't think this is supposed to happen. I just got an achievement called Fox or Flying Squirrel. Stay airborne for more than 8 seconds. Spirit, stop following me. I'm going down. Where I'm heading, you don't want to follow. I kind of want to see how far this goes. That one little bit of that one little bit of red. Okay, it doesn't anymore, but it kind of looked like a hand reaching up. I have become Star Fox. Yeah, I don't think the game was prepared for me to do that. Part of me is like, okay, let's quit out. Part of me is like, but what if I keep going? Oh dear. I am actually still moving down, I can tell. The red bits are like getting farther away. It's slow, but I am still going. Okay, so, my guess is that if I keep falling for like a really long time, probably longer than I'm willing to keep falling for, what'll start happening is I'll start running into floating point errors with the renderer, and everything will start to look really like weird and blocky and jagged. Not quite like a PS1 game, but kind of like evocative of a PS1 game. But I think it would legit take like an hour or two of falling to get that far away. But it would just get like worse and worse the farther out that I got. I don't think we're gonna find any new content down here. Progress in current chapter will be lost. I think I'm okay with not, like, being firmly on my way to the underworld. Spirit of the North, I assure you, I was very firmly going south. But I lived. Well, that happened. I've actually done more or less that exact same thing in Darksiders 2 as well. That game has a puzzle. Maybe not even a puzzle, more like a bit where like you have to like push a sphere around and like get it into things. And on one occasion I pushed the sphere so that it fell into a divot while I was in the divot. And it did that exact same thing, it pushed me through the world. taken the power back. In other words, if I had a nickel for every time that this would happen, I'd have at least 2, possibly more. Let's see if I can get up there. I presume I have to draw something out of the tower, which means going around this way. You're gonna go for today? Have a wonderful rest of your night. I will not be held accountable if you miss out on any more chaos, however. Yeah, that's my secret. There's always chaos. I'm a fox. These scenarios just sort of happen in my vicinity. I don't condone it, I don't control it, I merely condone it. I like how it just cleanly, like, hit the ground and just stopped. No, like, rattling or kicking up of dust, so it's just like, boop, done. Clean. This is fine. Once more through the gate. I think my favorite thing about all of this is that there is no indication whatsoever. Oh, hey, guy. There's no indication whatsoever that, like, the fox that you play as is anything other than, like, a completely ordinary, mundane fox. So, like, Fox just kind of shows up and starts puzzle solving entirely of their own volition. It's like, yes, there's magic, but foxes can just do that. See? I levitated that stab. Magic. Yeah, I'm like controlling magic that I'm like siphoning from the environment more so than generating my own. Give me like 100 years. Then I can make my own. Here, heavy thing. Will you teach me how to do magic? You look like a match. Ick. Guy. I think I got halfway through mage and then forgot how to pronounce mage. And then I was like, wait, I don't think it is, but like, what if the first syllable of that by itself is a slur? And then I just was like, let's keep going. But it was really awkward, and now I'm explaining it. Which is really just making the situation worse. Oh, that is goopy. No, desist. I'm a white fox, not a black fox. Not that there would be anything wrong with being a black fox, I'm just not. That is some noise that it is making. What will you do? Ooh, rocket jump, let's go. I don't have magic, so I can't zoom forward. But I do have agility, so like, who needs it? I'm a fox. Oh, shoot. Okay, never mind. Down warping is a thing. Am I playing Spirit of the North or Mario 64? The world may never know. I still remember how it, like, basically the first opportunity to do so in Mario 64, I hit a down warp. That was fun. I almost drowned. And then like a month later, a Pan and Koic video came out that's like, here's how down warping happens. And I was like, oh, that explains it. I hit like a really, really, really specific pixel while moving. Incidentally, if you're like a nerd of any stripe, I recommend Pan and Koic's videos like incredibly, incredibly highly. Like, that man probably knows more about Mario 64 than I know about all other topics combined. Yeah, like, watch Rolling Rock's 0.58 presses. He has to like explain the concept of like parallel universes and the means by which one can realistically access them as like a primer to the actual content of the video. Iconic stuff. Okay, so this is the one that means people die, I think. There is no people die glyph, so this is the Mountain of Roughs glyph, I guess. Full stack stones. There are graves on the mountains. There is Fox. There is Aurora. Also, staff, give. Thank you. It's my staff now, I'm gonna do magic with it. That or drop it when it becomes inconvenient to carry, one or the other. I don't need the staff to do magic. If anything, it's just holding me back. That sure looks like the source of all this. Cosplaying as the Cosplaying as the fox from Megabonk. You're not wrong. Megabonk being a 3D Vampire Survivors like, where the starter character is a fox mage. There appears to be a dead man in the vicinity. I suspect that if I go down there, I will not be able to return the man's scepter to him. Oh dear. Mistakes have been made. This is fine. Oh, the staff is just gonna keep doing this. Okay. I did see the cutscene the first time, game. Thank you for showing it to me again. This is fine. I guess the idea is that the goop is also related to the miasma. Once again, bath. This time more needed than others. And more importantly, a chance for a Thought explosion. And now we have nice clean water. Excellent. It'd be nice if we could do like wave dashes from Celeste. That would be nice. Unfortunately, the dash seems to be purely horizontal. I can also only do it if I have magic charge. Though thankfully it doesn't consume the charge, so that's something. Okay, we have people's textiles, there are graves on the mountain. Or just in general, I suppose. Mountain erupts, people die. Close enough. But yeah, the dash seems more like a translocate you forward thing more than a give you a bunch of true speed thing. Yeah, I presume that there are two more corrupted things that I gotta destroy. Luckily, as a fox, I'm very good at destroy. If you ever want to see, like, destruction on a level that you've never conceived possible, lock a fox in your house. They will get bored, and they will entertain themselves. Speaking of, we're going to take a 5-minute break here. Please use this time to refill your beverage, go to the bathroom. Anything that would take you about 5 minutes. I will see you shortly. I'm floating. I'm not actually standing on solid ground. I'll see you in about 5 minutes. I return, and the fox is VP. And still levitating, proving that it's a passive ability. But I live. My power only grows. Oh, hold on. The rendering for the box. I'm like leaving after images. I don't think I'm meant to be here. Oh, I see. There's literally a physical tendril that like connects to where the thing is. Okay, that'll make finding the last one a lot easier. I just need to locate the power that I need to destroy it. Ooh, power. My favorite. Lighting that thing up just because I like it more when things are lit up. Walking on water to assert dominance. Jesus isn't special. Anybody can do it. Just be a fox. And explode. Alright, where can I go now that the water level is high? This central thing looks climbable. Looks kind of like a barrow. It was in fact a geyser. looks like a place where I have to turn on jump gates. It's kind of got that circular architecture look to it. Henri, hi. I am indeed a white fox. With all the powers that implies, and several that it doesn't. You gotta be honestly clean and full of clothes. I am surrounded by, like, this awful dark sludge that will stain anything it touches. So, like, you have quite objectively come at the worst possible time if that's your goal. But that's okay, I welcome you anyway. Yeah, the things aren't big, but maybe I'll blow these up. Nope. And that was my power, so now I have to get more. I have now been stained, as previously discussed. Yeah, there's gotta be a place to put this power that will, like... either make the jump gate permanent, or, like, let me actually destroy the corruption so I can get through here. But I can only stay out of my body for so long before I get forced back into it. Platforming puzzle is probably a decent way to put it. Basically, you run around as a fox, and the goal is the overarching goal is basically make it to the source of, like, this red mist and do something about it. And everything is kind of, like, in service of that. And, like, along the way you get the ability to, like, hold this magical power inside of your body, and then, like, you start, like, unlocking abilities that you can, like, use the power for. Oh, I can just walk through things when I'm a ghost. I forgot. I think I figured out what to do. Another thing you can do is explode. Which, if I was close enough to the corruption when that happened, does seem to have gotten rid of it, but I still need to get up there myself with my physical body. Also, earlier, I did get killed and sent to hell. Like, the developers didn't code that into the game, it just happened on its own. Like, I'm not even joking. These guys also got killed. I don't know where they went afterwards, though. But yeah, basically, absolutely gorgeous game. Incredibly, like, visually pleasing landscapes. The plot, far as I can tell, is that, like... Wait, why am I charging up? Okay. Like, a volcano erupted and it, like, released, like, a magical plague that, like, killed everybody. And as a fox, I have to be the one to, like, stop it so that, like, life can come back to this region. And there's a little bit of jank involved, which means that because I'm the one playing it, all kinds of hilarious things have been happening. I've been gooped. It's like every Nickelodeon show from like the 90s all of a sudden. I might need to come back with a magic charge so that I can zip through the air. Or maybe I just need to non-suck at jumping. Awesome. Oh, the staff is lighting up. That means that its owner is somewhere nearby. Whether or not I will find him is a different matter entirely. Oh, also, the skin that I'm using is a Kitsune skin. Granted, it's mostly hidden under what I'm just going to call oil. But there's actually a bunch of skins. This is just one of them. Most of them you've got to unlock by finding, like, dead shamans and giving them their staves. I played this game before, so I've got all the skins. And I've also forgotten where all the shamans are, so, like... we do a little bit of looking sometimes. Also, the blue orb is another fox. So, like, I have a physical body. The other fox doesn't. She was still mostly tangible, but then, like, the player character fox got, like, mortally injured, and she had to sacrifice most of her power to both heal me and imbue me with the power to, like, do magic things. Which is why it's now my problem to, you know, fix things. Right, plague spores are raining from the sky. I'm pretty sure I missed my window of opportunity to give the staff back, but that's okay. The guy's dead. If he wants to complain, he can get up and do so. Okay, so eruption can also correspond to what I'm just going to call totem. Except this one is already doing that. Sometimes you just spin things until they work. It also would be nice if I could give the fox a bath. being all cooped up like this isn't exactly my idea of a good time. I wonder if whoever designed these ruins, like, designed them to come out askew and broken looking. Or if, like, the ruins broke and then they just installed hydraulics instead of fixing them. One can only speculate. We seem to be getting really close to the source, so that's something. And oh, there's... That's somebody who could bring the staff to. Hold on. I think I left it down there. Luckily, everything stays open, so... Not a particularly long detour to get it back. Here, have your thing. That must have been one of the ones required for progression. This doesn't look ominous at all. Let's go in there. Chapter 6. This feels very much like a Draugr ruin from Skyrim. It's got exactly the same color palette. Never mind, Draugr ruins don't have any of this. Also, at least in my game, they do have, like, glowing magical foxes, but that's more of a mod thing. Also, kind of off topic and now kind of like onto Skyrim, but like, a fun bit of Skyrim trivia. In Skyrim, when you customize your character, or like with any character really, the only thing that like is actually unique to a given character is their head. Like under the hood, all characters are just heads, with no bodies. They're just floating heads. And then the way it works is every creature that is capable of, like, equipping things has, like, a default equipment set, which is what is equipped to them if they have nothing equipped. Which is why you can have, like, Dremora warriors that, like, appear to wear Daedric, but then you can't loot the Daedric. It's because it's their default equip set. And for humanoids, like the player character, your default armor is just a naked body. So you're not actually like a person, you're a floating head wearing a headless body. That then gets swapped out for like bits of armor if you put on bits of armor. Yeah, if you mess with like the bodies for whatever reason, you very often get a bug where you just like are a floating head. Or like Aura Headless Body. Oh, that's not good. The spirit seems to have turned red. That's extra not good. Well, she's still a fox, so I'm sure she's trustworthy. Yeah, it's really funny. I was just thinking about Woody Woodpecker this morning. Like, it's an old cartoon. Like, it's so old that, like, the title cards for it brag about how it's in color. It's that old. And now I have become the woodpecker. I will get through this door eventually, don't you worry. But yeah, Woody had a really iconic laugh. It was like, I need to practice it a few times to do it properly, but it was a really iconic, unique laugh. It sounded like a woodpecker woodpecking. How would I get through there? I do see a thing up there. How might I get up there? I don't seem able to spin these. Thank you for the hydration. There is corruption aplenty, but I don't see any, like, locusts of it that I can destroy. Thank you for the rotation, it adds to my power. I'm like a flywheel, except I'm a fox. I wonder if I was meant to make it through the door and I just kind of didn't. There is a non-zero chance that that's what's happened. There also appears to be stuff up there. Hello. Just had to poke around a little bit, it seems. Little bit of a maze, that's okay. I like how I encounter one branching path and I'm just like, ah, maze, clearly. Okay, it's more like a right turn and a roundabout with flowers. That's fine. Easier to keep it in my head. Oh, she took the head off that statue. That was rude, don't do that. Oh, Steph. I was trying to backtrack and find flowers, but this works too. Is this one of the things that I can destroy? I only got the one thing of power, so I kinda don't want to risk it. At least for now. I could totally get through that door if they didn't cutscene lock me. This is fine. I can go through there as a spirit if I have magic. Oh, maybe what I gotta do is, like, tilt this way. Then go back through and take the power back. And then go through as a spirit. That sounds like a sequence of events that would work. Another staff. I feel like being in here is not great for my health. But it's okay, I've got magical powers to protect me. Oh, here, everything. Looks like there's only one left in the game. Fox. We're getting pretty close. Which, like, I could already tell because I'm, like, really close to the summit, but... There's, like, a multitude of things that indicate such now. Fox ascend. Above all others where it belongs. I'm reminded of the foxes that learned how to climb trees in order to hunt things that would climb trees to avoid foxes. Like, oops, how's that working out for you? And this looks like a guy. Everything back. I said, have your thing back. There we go. Right, that was presumably the last shaman in the game. There's a bunch of things that I want to light up. Only one thing to light things up with. You missed a bunch of stream tending to cat? That's okay. Kitties are important. Okay, so it's a toggle. Or is it like a sequential thing? Where it's like one thing can set it up by a certain amount, another thing can set it down by a certain amount? I wonder if it has to do with the number of skulls, actually. If that's the case, then maybe putting it back in here would set it up and synchronize it? Nope. I like how it just plays a cutscene of nothing happening. Like, just in case you thought you accomplished something. Right, I recall that the first one sent things very high up. I wonder if I'm missing one. Like if there's a fourth interactable. Is this one I think sends it down too far? behaving during the cutscene. This feels a lot like a Myst puzzle. Like, this feels like the sort of puzzle that would be in, like, a Myst game. But, like, that's not a bad thing, I suppose. Myst spelled M-Y-S-T. Really, really good series. Once I start doing, like, longer form, like, longer streams, I definitely want to play through the Myst series at some point. That's dead guy. Over here is surely a fourth thing. There's this thing. With 3 skulls in front of it. Hey, that's gonna be one that makes it go up. I'll use the single skulled one to make it go down. No, wait, it is down. Okay. Did I misinterpret the one that was over here? I suppose I must have. I'll try moving it up by the 2 skull one. I also presume that this area only opened up when I returned the staff to the guy. Excellent. Stuff right there. Perfect. Though I totally could have squeezed through while there was like an open bit here. I don't like the way that those things are pulsating. I presume that I cannot proceed without leaving the magic behind. Okay. I can see all the polygons in the middle of that. They're not quite lined up. Makes it look kind of different. Alright. I have no magic. I'm running through all this pollen, all this goop. I am getting slower. I am very clearly, like, losing energy. Fox train. She definitely needs, like, a bath and a hug. Thank you for the hydration. This definitely feels like I'm marching. Oh, I'm dead. Like actually. The fungus has claimed my body. Oh dear. That's okay, because I'm a fox spirit. Chapter 7. I am just permanently in spirit form. Spirit world is pretty, if a bit abundantly blue. Looks like the Twilight Forest from Minecraft or from something else. from Twilight? I've never seen Twilight. I appear to be shining, though, so that's nice. There's a bunch of blue filter in Twilight. I couldn't comment. Like I say, I've literally never seen it. I've read the first book, and none of the sequels, and I've seen none of the movies. Though seeing none of the movies is less to do with, like, having something against Twilight and more to do with just, I don't watch movies, ever. Yeah, the books were also awful, so like, yeah. That's a bit mean. The books were junk food. Sometimes it's what you're in the mood for, but like, it's not particularly good. Like, there's nothing wrong with a little indulgence. That said, some people like junk food way too much. Oh, fox. As it ought to be. Let's follow the aurora. I do think that auroras are super pretty. I live in Canada. We have, like, the Northern Lights here. I've never seen them. I feel like it's something that I ought to see at least once in my life, because apparently, like, because they're a light phenomenon, you can't really properly, like, take a picture or record them. Like, seeing them with your eyes is, like, completely distinct to, like, seeing a depiction of them. So at some point I'd like to do that. Yeah, the purpose of the journey was to, like, make my soul stronger and to, like, get me physically closer to the heart of the infection. Oh, fox. Excellent. How am I supposed to know where to go without my yellow paint? Watch out for Ko the Face Stealer. You can't steal this. Here's one of the dead guys. I believe... I guess he bows to me. I believe that there's one spirit wandering for every shaman that you return the staff to in the physical world. Also, yeah, like, I see it talking about Twilight, but like in general, that's kind of like a pet peeve of mine. Is like when somebody's like, "Oh yes, this is a story where I've incorporated like these classic fantasy things," but all they took was the name and like none of the lore from it. Like, oh yeah, I'm a vampire, but like I don't have to drink blood, and I don't have to avoid sunlight, and like my teeth aren't actually sharp. Or like, I'm a werewolf, but like I don't actually transform into the moon. I'm just slightly bigger and stronger than a human. There's really no downside. You know, if memory serves, the vampires in Twilight were, in practice, really more like golems. Like animate constructs, more so than like undead creatures. Yeah, in some settings, vampires are just demons. Demons are another, like, fantasy race that gets, like, name dropped but not really lived up to pretty often. It's like, oh, I'm a demon, but I'm a good person. It's like, then you're not a demon, I'm sorry. That's not how it works. At least in most settings. But like, if you're not like physically constructed out of evil in the same way that a human is physically constructed out of blood and flesh, like, why call it a demon? Foxes. I'm pretty sure I'm in roughly the right area. Mostly owing to the giant fox statues. The difference between demon and devil is like very much a setting specific thing. Sometimes they're like synonymous. In D&D though, like D&D has like a 2-axis alignment system, like good, evil, and then like lawful, chaotic. Demons and devils are both evil, but devils are lawful evil and demons are chaotic evil. Oh, there's a guy up there. I would say living his best life, but we're all kind of dead here. I've been through here already. That maybe I didn't find what I needed to find the first time. This feels like where I ought to go. I really do enjoy how shiny I am. We are running a little bit late today, but if memory serves, I'm extremely close to the end of the game, so I think I'm just going to push through and finish it. Oh, thank you for the headsets. Ghost Friend turned red because she got infected by, like, the miasma. And there's her spirit form, which, yep, has been partially corroded. And she's been restored. And now we're both at full power. She's so powerful she doesn't even have to run. She just has Heelys. But like, you've seen what one fox can do. Imagine what two can do. We are running across the Aurora, just like in the murals. Yes, we're insufficient. We don't need any extra brain cells. But we are introducing more fox. That's just like pure profit. Watch out for blue Koopa shells. I am a horde. Blue Koopa shells better watch out for me. Yeah, I do believe we're running all the way back to where we entered. Well, running is maybe a strong word for some of us. Aqua, welcome back. So yeah, I died, went to the spirit world, healed the soul of my companion. And I lived. And now we're both at full power. Jesus wishes he was a fox. He's nowhere near as powerful as we are. Well, that's a very Dark Souls-coded shot. Here we are. A statue of two foxes. The physical body of my companion. And a second pedestal. And with our combined power, we're able to seal away the infection properly, permanently. And yeah, our bodies are there. And I'm now permanently in spirit form. And we've become the Aurora. Are you talking about Aurora Borealis? Also, yeah, like the highest quote-unquote level skin for the Vox is actually a Tanuki skin. It's like, what are you doing? Come on. But yeah, absolutely beautiful game. A little bit janky, but like, what else could a Fox game be, you know? Oh, this other one? Gotcha. I didn't even know that there was a Southern Aurora. Yeah, now we can zoomies together forever. And with the two of us together, the seal will hold and there shall be no more plague. One box couldn't quite cut it, two quite cleanly took care of the whole thing. Yeah, I think we're going to call it there for the night. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it each and every time. Next scheduled stream is going to be on Friday. The game is going to be on Epic. A game that could not be more totally different from this if I try. As for what I'm doing next Wednesday, I have not decided yet. Have a wonderful night. I hope to see you again. Good night. And then the music just kind of like awkwardly cuts off.